Hey guys, Rexasuar here, and I am joined by Overkill,
What?
and we're going to be doing a little discussion about Warhammer because, in light of the recent events that have been going on in the community and other stuff, I thought it would be a good idea to sort of do a little disclaimer on mine and Overkill's position on Total War Warhammer.
Indeed.
Because basically, a lot of people think that because me and Overkill are into Warhammer quite a bit, into our lore and other stuff like that, that we think that Total War Warhammer is going to be the perfect game, 10 out of 10. No one can ever come close. Like literally, you lick it, you will die because it's that good. But that's not what we really think, is it, Overkill?
No, not quite. We are not having our high. Yeah. As people that are interested in Warhammer, me and Rex can both agree that our hopes are not like through the roof on this game. We both know that it's not a new engine. It's literally going to be the same core mechanics as Attila and Rome too. They're not going to change the engine just for this game. They're obviously adding in magic and big creatures and such. That is okay. Well, that is changes. Sorry, but it's going to play similarly. Like it's not going to be a completely new game. It's going to be the typical Warscape engine with Warhammer on it. But there are things that we are going to talk about that should keep you excited, even though the game itself will be quite similar to the older ones.
Yeah, to give you an example of how this game is going to be similar, for example, if you take Total War Attila and you play as the Huns, I'm pretty sure that playing as Chaos is going to be very, very similar. You're
Yep.
going to go around with your warbands, raising every settlement, and that's pretty much your goal.
Yep.
So yeah, we know that that's going to be a thing. We also know that on the battlefield, the individual unit animations are probably going to be annoying, as they still have been since Shogun 2.
Yep.
And just general little things that haven't been fixed for so long that are still going to be in the game. We know that this is a thing. But as Overkill said, there's going to be some really interesting, awesome stuff. And the first one I want to talk about is the variety in factions.
Yes.
Finally,
Finally.
the fact
you.
that every single faction is going to be different, has a different unit, has a different sort of faction trait. Which, although they kind of were in things like Rome 2, where all the Roman families had their different little faction
Yeah.
bonuses and stuff, is going to be so much more different because things like the orcs, for example, they get their war, which is completely different. Like, oh my god, just a completely new mechanic that has never been seen before, and
Yep.
it's going to be really interesting to see how that works.
And another important thing for the diversity of factions is also it's minor, but it's a big thing, is just size. Like dwarfs are smaller than everybody else. Men are men, of course. Orcs are bigger than humans and dwarfs. Then there's Chaos Warriors, which from the trailers look like they're going to be fucking huge, as they should be. So that's another thing that just keeps it diverse. It's not all man-sized people in the basic units of factions. It's all going to be different sizes, different strength. It's not going to be reskins at all like previous games.
Yeah, which is also one of the reasons why having individual factions as DLC, for example, the Chaos DLC. The
Yeah.
reason why me and Overkill were so excited for this, despite the fact that it was, oh, they're cutting out part of the game. These are going to be completely. They're not reskins, they're hand modeled skeletons, very different.
Yep.
You've got bloody Dragoths, which are ogres and a dragon attached to each other in a weird kind of mix with massive axes.
Yep.
That's not a reskin of a horse, is it?
No,
these
they're
are
going.
massive things.
They're
It's
going to
gonna
be
and
absolutely huge. It's going to be ridiculous.
And if you look at the Battle for Thundering Pass, where they showed off the goblin orc and goblin attack on the dwarves, and you saw the difference in scale between the giant, the Arachnarok spider,
Oh yeah.
all the cannons, the gyrocopters. The scale is there, and that is just something just going to be so good to see on the battlefield, and in general, it's going to be good.
Definitely. And that actually leads us into another point of what to be excited for Warhammer: flying units. since you
Hell
mentioned the
fucking yes!
since you mentioned the gyrocopters, flying units. Basically, everybody's going to have them. In the form of Deathclaw for the Empire or Griffins in general.
I think they have Pegasus as well. I think they have, they have
possibly.
Pegasus Knights.
I know Bretonia has Pegasus Knights. Is there a Pegasus mount? Is there a Pegasus mount for Empire?
I think there is a Pegasus. I'm going to check up on my facts right now.
I'm gonna read up on the lore.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
But while he's looking at that, then there's dwarfs with the gyrocopters and maybe gyro bombers if they add those in eventually. Actually, they've kind of integrated the two into one unit.
Yeah, it is kind of one unit.
Yeah.
Empire Army roster.
On tabletop, there's two specific things, but it seems like they do the same thing. So, okay, well, either way.
They have, the mounts for the Empire are Deathclaw,
yep,
Warhorse, Barded Warhorse, Imperial Pegasus, and Imperial Griffin.
Oh, there you go. So everybody can have griffins.
They must. So maybe I'll only be for the heroes.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, the mounts are for heroes. Yeah.
So yeah, they don't have any Pegasus Knights, but the heroes will be able to ride a griffin. So.
And then leading into the vampire counts, we have zombie dragons and possibly Terrorgeist if they're in.
Insane.
I'm very excited for that.
I'm pretty sure they would put the Terrorgeist.
Then there's also Vargeist and Vargulfs. If they add both.
I'd be interested, and also maybe units of just bats.
And bats, yes, classic bats.
For the lols.
So the vampire counts are probably going to have the most flying things in terms of units.
Yeah.
Which of course makes sense because vampires, bats, all that good stuff.
And then things like the orcs only really have the wyvern.
Pretty much.
You also get to control the Doom Diver catapult. So.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's gonna be awesome.
Oh, it's gonna be so good. I mean, the another thing about the unit versatility and just variety is that every single faction has these specialist units that on the tabletop make the armies so alive. That will work so well on the battlefield of Total War Warhammer. Things like the Fanatics.
Yeah.
I really want to know how they're going. If it's going to work like on the tabletop, like if a unit of Night Goblins has Fanatics attached to it, that they're going to be hidden and your opponent won't know where they are. But as soon as someone comes close, you just release the Fanatics and then they go flying and whirling.
I believe that's how it would work. Because there's definitely not going to be units of.
Yeah.
There's not going to be units of just Fanatics. Like that'd be a little weird. Yeah, I believe it might be something that you can equip them with. I don't know, or maybe a technology. Who really knows? Stuff like that has obviously
it probably will be an upgrade for a unit, surely.
Yeah.
Upgrade your units with Fanatics. Oh. Yeah, and So anyway, that's mostly battlefield based things. So things like flying units and the variety, but also a lot of the small changes, but changes that will very much change the way that you play the game will be the things on the campaign map. The fact that you now have tunneling, which is just a very different way of movement, which prevents mountains from being an obstacle. Finally. Yep.
And they showed that in the campaign, the Greenskins campaign video, where the Goblin army was trapped in a mountain pass by two dwarf armies, and he just tunneled under the mountain and just went right past them, no problem.
Yep. Another thing is that the campaign map will have these kind of I don't know how to read, but like locations on the campaign map that give campaign map buffs.
Yep.
So like I can't remember what exactly it was, but I think it was some kind of magical spire in the Badlands that they were shown in the campaign map that there was a goblin war boss next to. So that's something that we haven't seen properly. I think that's been a feature before, but it was province wide. Sort of, if you remember in Rome 1, you had the Seven Wonders, I think Rome 2 as well.
Yeah.
And that would give a province-wide buff, rather than just a location buff. So I think that's going to be very interesting to see how that affects the game, and what kind of different stuff, because on the tabletop game, there are terrain items give specific rules or buffs during the game, things like the Temple of Skulls, or other things, so there's some magical towers. It'd be interesting to see if those towers will also, or those locations on the campaign map will manifest themselves on the battle map, or whether they'll just be campaign map based. But either way, it's going to be quite a big change. Like if you have a big battle going on and you have a lot of wizards in your army, you might want to stick your wizard army close to your close to that location where there's a big magical tower to give yourself more buffs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be a very interesting way to see how that affects the campaign gameplay.
It'll also be a double-edged sword, because they mentioned that, of course, it makes your wizards more powerful, but it also buffs the enemy wizards if there are any nearby. So it is, if you see an enemy army coming through your lands near a magical part of the map, and they don't have a wizard, oh yeah, go for it. You're gonna absolutely destroy them with magic, but you could be on the receiving end of very devastating magical attacks if the enemy has a wizard as well.
Definitely.
Which
So,
leads us into our third point of why you should be excited: magic. Perfect.
Yes. How do you make a game of strategy that much more strategic? Casting the right spells at the right fucking time.
And hoping that you just don't miscast and
hope you
blow
don't
yourselves
miscast.
up. Oh boy.
I think one of the funnest thing about the tabletop of Total War Warhammer is the magic.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
no one can really deny that. And the ability to cast magic will most likely, I mean, it would be very... I mean, CA will have to fuck up majorly to not make this work in the actual battlefield of Total War Warhammer. Because magical spells, I mean, they've shown it off on several of their videos, things like the Comet, things like the Eye of... Goblin Eye, Evil Bad Moons, that's it. The Curse of Bad Moons. Looking, what am I thinking of?
Foot of Gork.
Foot of Gork. All these spells that are just so iconic on the battlefields of the tabletop will become iconic on the battlefields of Total War Warhammer, and will completely change because in, say you have a dwarf gun line, now you don't particularly want to have just a static gun line waiting for the orcs to charge you, because you might just get footed.
Pretty much.
And it's like,
right, all over your artillery.
Yeah, which is not something you really want. So you have to think about being slightly more mobile. So it might prevent some things like corner camping in the multiplayer, for example, or if that still happens, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, things like that. And I don't know, magic for me is going to be one of the most important. However, there is a problem of if you don't take an army with a wizard, you might get completely destroyed.
Oh, yeah,
so
definitely.
there might be an over-reliance on the magic.
Yep, because it is kind of like that in the tabletop as well. It's very hard to do very well without at least one wizard. To either it may not even be an offensive wizard. You could bring, say, well, all of them have slight negative buffs or attacks for enemy factions, but say like metal can buff armor and stuff. Life, of course, restores wounds and all that, heals people.
Health and shit,
But like, yeah, if you don't bring magical, or wizards or magical characters in general, you could get thrashed pretty badly, especially if the enemy does have a very powerful wizard. So it will be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's also a problem of the tabletop, really, is that if you in a semi-competitive environment, you have to bring at least one magic wielder just in case to prevent enemy spells from happening. Yeah. But CA did say in their, I think it was Battle for Blackfire Pass, when they did the walkthrough, like when the guy was actually going through what was going on. Yeah. He did say that they were trying to balance it so that magic wasn't the be all end all of the game. Which, so basically, I think that what they're saying is that magic is going to be nerfed to an extent compared to the tabletop.
Yeah, definitely.
Such as, I mean, we know that there's going to be a pool of magic, and that casting big spells is going to take up a very big portion of that pool, and it'll slowly regenerate, which is kind of different to how it works on the tabletop, in the way that you can cast a big spell every time. Yeah. Because that's how it works on the tabletop. So I think that's a good way of doing it, because it is true that if I was to bring... I mean, if magic was overpowered, I'd just bring 3 wizards in every army and just own. And
yeah,
be like,
pretty much.
That's it, done. So yeah, I mean, that is one of the precarious points that CA has to deal with the magic, I think. But I'm still incredibly excited for it.
Yes, me as well. That brings us to the point of vampire counts. Every character in vampire counts, other than say White Kings and Ghoul Kings, are wizards. Basically, they have necromancers and vampires, which know lores of vampires. Because they need to be magic, or who would keep the armies going, basically. So yeah. I don't know how they're going to do it in Warhammer. We haven't been leaked anything about vampire counts yet. Yeah, I think how they're going to do it, because if every single faction, I mean, apart from the dwarves who have no magic, has a pool, I think what they're going to do is they're going to make the small things like Invocation of the Heck and the small powers be very low cost. Yeah. Or maybe even just be like a authority buff range rather than actually be a proper spell, or like an activatable thing like Rally was. Yeah.
Maybe just a small one, and then the major ones like Dance Macabre and other stuff like that
Yeah, that stuff
might be proper spells.
that stuff could actually backfire because I don't know how you'd really backfire Invocation of Nehek. That doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, I know, right?
But that's
Oh
another thing.
no.
That's going to be interesting. I wonder how that's going to work for units of zombies and skeletons and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like
are
that.
they going to regenerate or stuff on the battlefield? That's not something that we've ever seen in Total War. I mean, obviously we've never seen it in Total War, but that we've never seen like units been healed
Yeah.
ever.
And that's
So
exactly what the lore of vampires is about, is raising new units and healing units that you had before, pretty much. So it's going to be
it's going to be
very
very
different.
interesting. So yeah, and then
It could be as simple as regenerating a unit. I highly doubt it would raise a new unit like it can in the tabletop, because that would kind of break the whole 20 units per army thing. But who knows? It's up to CA to really do it, whatever they want to do.
and then final point I want to make over the cautiousness of Total War Warhammer is that obviously with every Total War there's always been two sides to the game. I mean, obviously it's very focused on the single player, but multiplayer is very important in Total War. Things like co-ops versus, or even just 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s. I'm personally hoping, because Total War Warhammer and the way that the leveling system is being played in the campaign, that they're going to bring back some sort of avatar campaign as it did in Shogun 2.
It would be nice. I would definitely like that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be incredibly nice if that was the case. I wouldn't be too disappointed if it's not in the base game, but they add it later.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd understand that because it's quite a bit. I mean, if they're doing it like the Avatar campaign, they have to split up everything in its regions again and have to do a whole matchmaking system, and there's quite a lot of work.
Well, that's the thing.
Especially since they have so much shit to do in Total War Warhammer in the first place.
Yeah.
Plus, you'd have to balance all like the magic spells continuously to make sure things aren't overpowered.
Yeah, Warhammer really relates itself to that system good, because you could choose your race, and depending on what you choose is your strengths and weaknesses and all your different units and stuff. It would be great. But
I mean, one of the reasons why I think they chose to do the Avatar campaign with Shogun 2 but not with Rome and with Attila is because in Shogun 2 everyone's got the same units.
Yeah.
Whilst in Rome 2 and in Attila there are like three, like, I mean, if you pick Attila, there are like 2-3 really strong factions and all the rest are weak.
Pretty much.
It's like, or you either play Roman or Sassanids.
Yep.
Or Huns if you're going full cav. And then in Rome 2 you either play Romans or Seleucids, or there's I mean, people who play really good can play with those smaller factions, but in the end it's all that. But with Total War Warhammer, because every faction is so different, there's a way to counter everything. I mean, that's why it works on the tabletop. So I think there is potential there.
Even if there isn't an Avatar Conquest, it will be a lot more fresh multiplayer. There will be a lot more fresh multiplayer engagements than the other games per se, because you won't be just fighting like the strongest factions. It's going to be all It makes me sad that I don't know exactly the number of factions in Warhammer. What is it, like 14, 12?
I think it's 16, but
16? Something like that.
I think that there are 16. Official in brackets, but I think only 14 actually had army books in 8th edition.
There you go.
That is like, literally off the top of my head. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's something like that.
But it sounds right.
It sounds right, so it must be. But it's just gonna, between those 14 factions that are all going to be completely different. Even the elves, and that's something most people that are just learning about Warhammer don't know. They just know the 5 factions we've been told about. The 3 factions of elves are even going to be different.
They are so different. High elves, dark elves, wood elves, all of them play so differently on the tabletop, and will play so differently on the battlefield.
Like you like to the blind eye, you can relate the dark and high elves because of not similar
they've all
appearance
got
as
similar
their
units in terms of like they've both got dragons, they both got wizards, they both got strong artillery to an extent. Well, bow. They got bow artillery. But they both play so differently.
Yeah. Both have their own magic lores as well. High magic and is it dark magic? I don't think.
I don't know.
It's something like that.
I'm not sure.
But
It might be
they
blood
both
magic.
they both each have their own. And high elves can use almost every lore, I'm pretty sure.
They can use every single one of the base
Yeah.
laws. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think dark elves are more towards just the more evil kind of lores like death and shadow and stuff like that. But and then there's wood elves that are just all skirmishers and tree people, literally.
Yeah.
It's going to be very interesting.
It is going to be really interesting. It's also going to be interesting when they add the ogres in, because as you were saying in your Warhammer, when you were showcasing your ogres, you were saying that they use blood magic, gut magic. That's the one, and that's going to be really interesting to see how that works.
Just opening a giant mouth under the enemy army and it just swallows people.
Nom, nom, nom. See, I'm really interested. Like eventually, when they add the Skaven. For because the Skaven obviously they don't use any of the laws either. They have their two laws. They have the Law of Plague and the Law of Ruin, which are technically not magic, kind of. So things like Crack's Call is just going to be insane to see on the battlefield. Just a massive earthquake happens and they just fall through.
Yep.
Oh, it's going to be good. I'm looking for. Me and Overkill both really looking forward to this game.
If you couldn't tell,
very excited. If you can't tell. But we are aware that it's still a total war game.
Yeah, it's not
the total war problems with it.
It's not like the dream game that's gonna end all games that we've ever played. It's still Total War. Not saying that I don't like Total War games. Obviously, I wouldn't have made a YouTube channel about them if I didn't like them. But I expect the problems that come with every Total War game. I expect the mechanics that I don't like about some Total War games to be there. That's just stuff you got to deal with a game series. They're not gonna just change it if it's not game breaking really. But the addition of all these new things is going to definitely outweigh anything that carries over from Attila and Rome 2 for sure for me.
Yeah. So that was good. I'd like to end it there. That was pretty good. Technically I should be streaming. I'm 5 minutes late, but never mind.
We made all of our points. So
if I had to end with one thing, it would be banners.
Yeah.
Because that's just the most excitable thing I have, pretty much. That won the game over for me as soon as I saw that was in the game. It's like, oh my god, this is technically it's not a small part of the tabletop, but it's not really a major part either. You could just not bring banners, but it
adds so much because certain armies have dozens of different banner choices, and it just adds so much.
So good. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Overkill, for joining me for this video.
Of course.
And we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.